Good morning, Apollo Baptist Church, and other viewers that have been watching the vlogs that we've been doing since COVID started, I guess some 9 or 10 months ago. I've lost track. Um, I hope your hearts are encouraged. Um, I hope that we together can look to God and be encouraged by His truth. Our reading plan at Apollo Baptist Church is Isaiah chapter 14, 15, 16, and 17 for this week. 4 chapters. Not a lot, and it's designed that way so that you can go over it and over it and over it. A lot of times we just try to read and get through it, but our goal is to read slowly and let the Word of God get through us. Let it penetrate our heart. Let the Spirit of God use His Word like a sword to pierce deep and cause us to see in ourselves what we need to see. I want to speak to us a little bit from Isaiah 14. God is speaking about Babylon. Babylon was going to be used as a source of chastisement for the people of God. He was going to use the empire of Babylon to come in and destroy Jerusalem and take the people of God into exile to Babylon. And if you will, just the old proverbial hard spanking, God's discipline in order to get His children to think right and walk right and to pay attention to God. It reminds you of growing up when your daddy would take you aside and just give you a spanking. Well, God speaks regarding Babylon, and He says Babylon will not stay in a major force forever. Because of their arrogance and because of their pride, God will bring them down and God will destroy them as a people. And God will not forget His people Israel. His discipline is only temporary. He will cause them to be again the purposeful, the delighted, the bountiful people of God that He is able to bless. So in Isaiah 14, when he speaks about Babylon, in chapter 14, verses 12 and 13, he uses poetic language and he compares Babylon and its arrogance as being very much like Satan and his arrogance. He says, "How you have fallen from heaven, O star of the morning, son of the dawn. You have been cut down to the earth, you who have weakened the nations. But you said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit on the mount of assembly in the recesses of the north." The whole passage has been talking about Babylon. And here he says, "How you have fallen from heaven, O star of the morning." The phrase star of the morning in Hebrew is also the same exact word for Lucifer. Lucifer is one of the names for Satan. So is he talking about Babylon or is he talking about Satan? And you know what the answer is? Yes, it's both. Why is that? Well, Satan is the originator of rebellion. Satan is the originator of defiance against God. Satan is the originator of challenging God and wanting to be our own God. And so Babylon was what it was because it was infused with the deception and the lie and the arrogance and the rebellion that Satan had promoted. And so here it is no wonder that he actually almost weaves into the text in Isaiah regarding Babylon, the statement about Satan. He says, "How you have fallen from heaven, O star of the morning, Lucifer, the star of the son of the dawn. You have been cut down to the earth. You have been weakened. You have weakened the nations." Yes, you did. But you said in your heart, "I will ascend to heaven, and I will raise my throne above the stars of God." That's what Satan does. "And I will sit on the mount of assembly." That's what Satan does. But the fact of the matter is, God said you will be thrown down. There is a cross-reference of that passage in Luke chapter 10, when Jesus sent out his disciples 2 by 2, and they came back and they were rejoicing at how they had great victory. And it says in verse 17 of chapter 10 in Luke, "The 70 returned with joy, saying, 'Lord, even the demons are subject to us in your name.' And Jesus said to them," verse 18, "I was watching Satan fall from heaven like lightning. Behold, I have given you authority to tread on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing will injure you. Nevertheless, do not rejoice in this, that the spirits are subject to you, but rejoice that your names are recorded in heaven." It's a cross-reference, kind of, to Isaiah 14, where Babylon likened themselves to Satan, and they fell. In Luke 10, Jesus was addressing his happy pilgrims, his happy disciples, as they came back, and they were rejoicing with great joy over the victory that they had over Satan. And he said, "Be careful. Don't think too highly of yourselves. I have seen Satan fall." In other words, if you think you're that great, you might fall. Right. Enjoy the victory, but let your main joy be that your names are written, recorded in heaven. You see, the thing that makes us rejoice ultimately is not so much what we do, but rather whose we are. Israel, being spoken of in Isaiah, had been so disobedient, and yet, they were still God's children. And as a result of that, God would ultimately bring them back, and God would ultimately cause them to stand. You and I, our glory is not so much what we do, but rather whose we are. And I just want to encourage you, when we go through times of discipline, they won't last. What will last for us, the children of God, if you have given Jesus Christ your heart, is his promise and his plan in your life. God will raise you up. God will raise me up. God will cause us to stand, just like he did Israel. And the enemy will not have the last word. Yes, that's good news. Love you. Keep your heart pointed in the direction of the Lamb and the Son, and he will work in your life, no matter how difficult the day is. See you later.